Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas. Today it's my proud privilege to welcome a budding artist, I should say, or should I say someone who has the spirit that wants to explore creatively this world, and not only explore but to share the arrangement that she finds makes it more interesting, more enjoyable. She's a multifaceted and diverse graphic designer, and she has specialized in print, web, social media, advertising, you name it. She came from Delhi to pursue her master's in communication design here at Pratt Institute. And I have the pleasure of welcoming Smrita Jain. Smrita, welcome to iTV studio.
Namaste. Namaste.
So before we talk about your journey here in New York, let's go back to Delhi. As a child, when was it that you felt camera or frame or lights and shades, colors, all this is attracting you?
Since I can remember, I think my passion of drawing was the first thing that got me, and since school I've been drawing crazy things, and that's when I realized that something is related with art that I want to do. And in the 12th standard I decided to pursue political science, and then from there on I decided to move into graphic design and combine my skills of research and creativity both. So I think since I can remember I've been with arts and everything to do with arts.
You know, we'll talk about an important work of Smrita which is related to Durga Mata. But before we go to that, going back to Delhi, your formative years, so something is there in you and that needs to be shaped, that needs to be groomed. So it is the environment around you, or maybe some artist whose work you feel is fascinating. From that point of view, if you recollect some of the influences that helped you in becoming what you are right now?
Actually, most of my influence was seeing American graphic design, and I was very lucky to be introduced when I was probably in 10th standard and 11th standard in my school. That's when we had these career services, and people used to come up and show international graphic design work. And one of the designers was Saul Bass. He's no longer living, but he's a very famous American graphic designer, and his work has always been influential, and I've learned a lot seeing his work. So it was more than anybody, it was actually American design that really got me the attention.
So that you can probably help us understand, many of us feel that India has its own cultural stamp on any artist. Indian sensibility is considered to have some sort of a special feel to it. And when you compare that with the contemporary artwork here in America, and talking especially from the point of view of graphic designing, so is there anything that you would say can be said to clearly define the difference between these two streams of creativity?
Yeah, definitely. American graphic design is very much influential to the European graphic design. That is where the real graphic design originated. And they're very modern, very contemporary, very clean, and very free of ornamentation and decorative motifs. As when it comes to Indian culture and Indian graphic design, a lot of work is connected to motifs and curvy and flurry designs and floral designs, because our work was connected to the Persian and Arabic culture that came, and the Mughal period, and that's how our art and design made the base. So they are very different, and the challenge is to combine them, and that's the real challenge, to combine those floral motifs and yet have it in a much more modern and contemporary fashion. So they're very different, and yet there's a lot of connection that one can make.
The world that we live in, that has brought Smrita to New York from Delhi, which tells us that this global capital of creativity in some way the place which we say is Big Apple and that never sleeps. It has a kind of artistic aura of its own.
Mm-hmm.
So from the point of view of graphic designing, what was it that helped you decide to come to America and not go to France or some other country? What was it that helped you decide or zero down on Pratt Institute to pursue your master's?
Firstly, Pratt being at the heart of New York City, it really gives you a lot of options to explore. And New York is one place where you can practice design at many levels, and not just that you being a designer, but you can combine your photography skills, you can combine your type design skills or hand illustration skills, and combine these variety of mediums and skills to produce something original. So New York is definitely one place because there's so many disciplines that one can combine. So I think that was one of the reasons why I decided. And Pratt is a wonderful college, and it has so many activities and so many exhibitions and things that they do beyond design. So that's why I chose Pratt and New York.
Talking about the relationship between technology and creativity, so many times still people who have not moved ahead with technology, they feel when the photography becomes a part of someone's creative expression in frame, they give little less marks in terms of the importance. They feel that some original thing is missing because of the involvement of technology. Of course, there could be different perceptions about it. So from your point of view, how technology adds, or does it take away some sort of a touch of soul of the artist?
Everything has two sides. Everything is good and bad. It's how one wants to use it. And when I do my photography, like I am doing a lot of digital photography as well, but I have done a lot of photography using a manual camera, meaning depending completely on what the light source that's available at that point of when you're shooting. So and I've used that is a technology itself, and you've used it in a modern way. But it really depends, because technology should not really it should not really force you to think. You should force the technology. You should have the control over technology rather than technology controlling your style of work. So that is very important, the use of technology. Like, don't make it overcome you, but rather you should take control of the technology and then use it the way you want it. So
we are proud of young artists like Smrita, who makes use of their creativity and also combine their know-how of the technology to create something different, something unique. Now, going to your life as a student here at Pratt Institute, was there something new that you felt was coming to you through all these classes that helped you in evolving as an artist?
Oh, definitely. The very first class as a base class that you do is typography, which is unfortunately a little weaker in India. And you get to learn a lot about type and typeface design and how fonts work in graphic design, because graphic design is about graphics and type coming together to communicate an idea. That's what graphic design means. And in India, however, you don't get to explore type so much as you get to explore in American design scenario, because American design is based on the European model of design as more. So I think type design was a very important class that I got to learn in Pratt Institute, and it's one of the best. I've worked with very good teachers. Tony Despina is a very famous type designer that I did my thesis with. I did my typeface design with him. So it's a they have a very strong base of typography, and graphic design is nothing without typography.
So talking about type design, when you say type design, laymen's like me think that there are certain fonts which have some types and they're already there. I mean, so what are you doing? Just picking them and selecting or something else?
There's somebody who's actually designed it. And I have designed one of Indian typefaces, and I combined the Indian script with a modern typeface Futura, and I combined the structure. So like what you see on the computer as font, it is actually designed by someone physically. And the way you design is you literally do hand sketches first, and you pick out the best sketch, and then you scan it, and then on top of it you start drawing it. And then you take that on a program. That's when you use the technology to make that font active. And then all you have to do is just type, and it works.
So wonderful. So we get a lot of help from creativity of people like Smrita Jain, who brings different types, different fonts for us. So there is someone who has created it. It's not just that computer one day or only technology has created it. It is the human mind that brings all these things available to us.
Yeah.
Now, talking about camera, then web, of course, that is internet, then social media. You have been active on various fronts, print media as well as social media. You have also done exhibition design. Then there are wall graphics and signage, all these things. So they require same substance of creativity and skill, or for example, if you are doing a book cover, then you have to think, meditate, and come up with something differently, whereas while you are designing a brochure, it's a different personality of Smrita that would be reaching the viewers.
The basic principles of design stay wherever you go. They're universal principles. You have to bring rhythm to your work. You have to bring variety of color to your work. These are basic principles that stay and are used universally. You can't get away with that. But if I'm working, let's say, on a book cover design, there are lots of aspects that you have to see. Who's viewing the book cover? How is it being viewed? And is the book being produced digitally, or is it being produced on a print-based medium? And when you do an exhibition design, you have to think of a 3D space. You have to think about how a person is experiencing your work, how they're seeing the work within 4 walls. So again, the basic design principles remain same. It's just the application depends on project to project. So when you're working on signage, you have to see the distance between the viewer and when you're going to see the sign. If you're making a signage for a highway road, you have to figure out when that point of sign will be seen by the driver, at what distance before he has to make the left turn or the right turn. So, and there's a lot of science involved. It's not just design. There's a lot of science involved in terms of the eye distance, and a lot of people are foresighted and short-sighted, so you have to come up with a principle that's going to be convenient for everyone. So there's a lot of science, there's a lot of design, there are a lot of other principles that you have to take in consideration when you're designing.
I'm really impressed, Smrita. You mentioned about you have to have a rhythm to your work, and I'm thinking you are talking graphic designing or book cover designing, and what rhythm has to do with it. So how this rhythm works in your creativity of this kind?
Rhythm can be explained in a lot of ways. Rhythm can be how the eye movement is done. When you see, let's say when you see New York Times newspaper, you get to see the big news first, the little headings on the side. That sort of an arrangement of design, when you're designing, that is also called as rhythm, because you're trying to create an eye movement. And that is like a rhythm, just like music. You start on a low bass and then you go high up, just like that. So when you're doing book design, how you start a story, how you tell the story, you first form a base, and then you do your layouts also accordingly. You give a nice page of introduction, why you're doing it, and then you gradually tell the story. And the way I did my book design, Creating Durga, the book that I designed, the way I did that was the first half is all black and white photography, and the second half is all color photography. So I'm trying to bring a rhythm. That's also a rhythm and a flow where the entire structure, when the artists are making the sculpture and everything, that is all black and white. And when they put the color on the sculpture, the entire book goes color. So that's also another rhythm.
So there is a creative evolution that takes place in the mind of artists. Many times we are not even aware what is it that is working on us when we see somebody's artwork of this kind. Now, staying with the word rhythm for a while and talking about the rhythm of New York, this city is very special. It has its own energy. So as an artist, how you feel your relationship with this city has developed, and when you see yourself, let's say 10 years down the line, how do you see your being in New York might help you in evolving as an artist?
Yeah, like I said, I chose New York and Pratt Institute because they give you a variety of levels to work as a designer. You're not just working as a designer doing a 9-to-5 job. There's so many things. You can collaborate with other artists and create community projects, which I intend to do moving forward. And there's like Indian Arts Council. They collaborate with designers and artists and book writers. So there's just so much multicultural thing that's happening in New York City that 10 years down the line, I think I would be working for community and creating projects that would help community and help bring the art which is within the community.
Wonderful. So Smrita, your aesthetic sensibility took you back to your hometown, Delhi, and you came with this book, Creating Durga. Mm-hmm. In fact, Durga is creating everybody. That's how we look at Ma Durga. She's referred to, and especially during Navratra days, there is special worship of Durga Mata going on. And I believe a lot of pictures that you have in your book relates to making of the idol of Durga. Mm-hmm. So share with me how this idea came about and the experience of visiting all these artisans while they were working.
Yeah, my inspiration and the idea came from my parents and my sisters. They have always supported me, and more than anybody, it was my father who, since I can remember, we have gone to these temples since I was 5. And he has really made an effort to make sure that we understand what this culture is, what this festival is. And that's when I decided, like, how is it done? What is the behind the scenes aspect? And that's when I decided that I want to explore how the making is done, how these sculptures are made. And I realized that these artists are very poor. They live on streets, they work on streets, and they need a platform. They need some sort of a base to tell how they work and what it really takes to make such beautiful sculptures and lifelike sculptures. They look very real and very, very creative, and every sculpture is so different from the other sculptures. So that's the kind of art I wanted to explore.
I want to applaud Smrita for not only bringing such a beautiful, wonderful book with photos as well as illustrations, and she has written herself, and there are very apt quotes to go with the book at various places. And before I turn over this question to Smrita, requesting her to share her understanding of light and shade, because in many of the pictures that we see in the first half of the book, there is such a simple beauty that is ready to welcome us, like in this photograph, if you get to see a part of it. So there is a serene quality of the combination of light and shade with these shapes. It's almost meditative. So how was it while you probably had many of your pictures taken, and then this one came out of it?
Definitely. I think I took about 700 to 800 pictures, and there's 63 pictures that I selected for this book. 31 of them were showcased at Pratt Manhattan Gallery. But talking about light and shade, that's exactly what photography is. Photography is nothing but light and shade. So is drawing. Like when you're learning how to draw, you're not learning how to draw a line, but you're actually learning how to shade something, or how to make it lighten up. That's how you learn light and shade. So that's a very good question that you brought up about light and shade, because that's the basic principle and a universal principle that a designer and a photographer learn as to how to bring a contrast. And that contrast is also connected to the rhythm, to the work.
And I'm kind of repeating slightly what you mentioned, that when the colors are introduced, then you start finding colorful images in her book, and which is kind of slightly as if you're climbing up stairs of some sort of a discovery that this creative process is taking shape. So if you care to share how, when you conceived your book, in terms of its impact for the reader, was there some clarity of some idea as to how it's going to work on someone who is reading it or looking at it?
I wanted to keep it very subtle. I wanted people to, like, initially when anyone's looking at the book, is like, oh, is it all black and white? I was like, no, you should see it further. They're absolutely full color images later on. And they said, oh, wow. That's when they realized. So I wanted to keep it very subtle. I didn't want it to have it a very bold way to tell, like, okay, this is black and white and this is, it goes very gradual. And I always thought that when I'm going to make this book, it definitely has to be divided into color and black and white. But again, the way that I've designed it is very subtle. People don't realize that, and I want to keep that thing as a very minimalistic point, because that's an experience I want a person to have, not something that they learned from other person, but an experience that they got.
So let's talk about your focus for future. You have a painter in you, a poet in you, someone who loves doing research on these art-oriented subjects. That person is there, and of course graphic designer who has designed many brochures. And so do you see all of them, meaning all these qualities have a sort of harmony, or sometimes you feel that you would rather paint, or you would rather go and take your camera and do photography?
I think I can never separate them. I think everything is interconnected. When I'm working on photography, I'm thinking, can I have a little airbrush my photograph and then scan it and rescan it? So I think combining hand skills and artistic skills and illustrative skills to your work, and combining these skills are even more important rather than just being a painter or just being a photographer or just being a designer. So I think combining skills will make you much better and help you control over your work even more than ask someone else to do photography for you, when you know you can do photography and all you have to do is just art direct somebody. So I think having multiple skills is more helpful rather than just being one. At least at this in this kind of world where you want to work in a different with variety of people.
So variety of people and variety of aspects of different art forms combining, and many sayings are changing their meaning. So she would probably subscribe to master of all. So that kind of thing. And I think it makes sense, because you can arranged the way you want it. And your ability to understand different mediums helps you in weaving the pattern in a way that it gives the desired impact. So lots of good wishes to you, and once again I want to commend the approach with which this artist Smrita Jain, a designer, photographer, of course writer and a poet, is working. She's multifaceted, and her diverse graphic design specialization is helping her combine the artistic sensibility as well as understanding of all that is being offered by technology. Again, lots of good wishes, and may more and more people get to see this creating Durga, a wonderful journey of understanding and creativity. Thank you very much for being with us, Smrita.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks to all of you for joining us. This is Ashok Vyas.